Immigration is a topic we cover regularly during our newscast, but the focus is often on the southern border, what leads up to immigration detention, and protests. This week on Real Talk with Micah Smith, we are talking about what it is like to fight a deportation case, what immigrants from other non-Latin American countries are feeling, and we share a deeply personal story from one of our Denver 7 family members. Welcome to Real Talk with Micah Smith. I'm your host, Micah, and I am so glad to have you with us. Immigration has been one of the most publicized and politicized issues across the country in recent months, but this issue is about much more than policies. It's about people, families, and the futures they're fighting to build. Throughout this episode, we'll share real stories from people navigating America's immigration system and the local organizations working to support them. Here in Colorado, thousands of immigrants face a confusing, complicated, and costly court system. And with the recent national crackdown on immigration enforcement, many are facing a new wave of fear and uncertainty. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security says it has deported more than 500,000 people since President Donald Trump began his second term. Thousands more are being held in detention centers, including here in Colorado. One of them is immigrant rights activist Jeanette Vizguera. In 1997, Vizguera fled violence in Mexico to seek safety in Colorado. In 2009, a judge ordered she be deported after she pleaded guilty to Social Security fraud in order to work. During President Trump's first term, she gained national attention when she took refuge inside a Denver church, living there for 86 days straight to avoid being removed from the country. Eventually, the Department of Homeland Security said she would not be deported. Earlier this year, ICE took her back into custody. She is now being held at the Aurora ICE facility as she fights deportation once again. Joining us now is a colleague of Vizguera's, Jen Piper. Jen, you've known Jeanette for a very long time, working side by side in terms of advocacy for immigration reform. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
I do have to ask you this because you know Jeanette so well and you are in this space. Why do you think her case has received so much attention nationally and even internationally?
So Jeanette Vizguera has been an advocate for human rights for many years. Before she was ever in deportation proceedings, she was very well known in the community. And I think that her case should receive a lot of attention because the only reason she's in immigration detention right now is because of her speech, is because she's been such a vocal advocate over so many years. And this administration targeted her for that speech, and that is the reason that they refused to allow her to leave the facility.
What are the biggest legal challenges you're facing right now in terms of your work and helping our immigrant community members who are trying desperately to get the documents they need to live here legally?
Yeah, I think, the time that Jeanette was placed into deportation proceedings was a time in Colorado where our local law enforcement cooperated or were ordered to collude with immigration and customs enforcement. And we since have passed a lot of protections in this state. But what we see with people, in particular people who have applied for asylum, is the government knows everything about them and is making it more and more difficult, almost impossible for them to access asylum or to have a fair hearing. And so what we're seeing right now are community members who've been here 3, 4, 5 years being detained for no reason. Nothing's changed in their case, as well as all of our neighbors who have been Coloradans for decades, who have no path to citizenship, being targeted just for being brown on the street.
Wow. Would you say that is one of your biggest challenges you faced just as an advocate in the past 11 months, or are there even bigger challenges? It's hard to imagine, but.
I think the main challenge right now is that all of the policies are designed to punish and scare people. But I've been really encouraged by seeing my fellow Coloradans stand up. This is a moment where a lot of people feel fear and uncertainty. But we know that together we can protect each other and we can build a better future, build better policies than what we've had for many, many years. These immigration policies have been exclusionary and discriminatory for decades and decades. And Trump is just taking that to its furthest extreme.
So the system has been broken for decades and decades from president to president. we're just kind of seeing almost the results of maybe failed policy for decades?
I think the system is doing exactly what it's designed to do, which is to keep people in vulnerable positions, to have a workforce that doesn't have the same access to rights and pay that the rest of the workforce does. And I think that under Trump, what we see is Congress quintupling the funding for these enforcement and detention operations. And what that means in our communities is people that we love and trust and that we know are good for Colorado are being ripped out of our lives every single day.
Yeah. Jeanette so kindly did an interview with me while she is at GO, still in detention, and she is still very much an advocate and still fighting, but I could hear for the first time in a long time in interviewing her just despair, just sadness. Do you get that when you're talking to other community members as well?
Yes. Immigration detention is exactly like jail. You're in a cell. You are almost never get to leave that area where you're held in a pod. And in many ways, it's worse than jail or prison. There's no programs. And in order to speak with your family or to buy extra calories, you have to have money. Everything about that place is about making profit for the GEO group, and nothing is really about keeping us safe. We just finished accompanying a family who had been trying to have their husband deported to Ecuador for many months. He languished in detention. People in detention don't have an end date. There's no date that they know for sure they're going to be removed or where they will gain their freedom. And where deportation used to feel very much like a loss, in the system we have under Trump, that's often the only way that you can gain freedom and access to your family again. So people do get very depressed in detention, and they also lose weight, and many leave with longer lasting health conditions.
That is so tough. Jen Piper, immigration advocate and colleague of Jeanette Vizquera, thank you so much for joining us for this Real Talk.
Thank you.
And coming up, it takes a community to come together to support newcomers. After the break, I'm talking to one organization about the work they do to help people from all over the world resettle and rebuild right here in Denver. This is Real Talk with Micah Smith. Welcome back to Real Talk with Micah Smith. Today we are diving into the reality of immigration in Colorado, from the court system to community support. Often when people think about immigration, they imagine families coming from Latin America. But the truth is, immigrants come to the U.S. from all over the world, Asia, Europe, Africa, and beyond. Once they arrive in the U.S., whether they're seeking safety, reuniting with family, or starting over, the challenges do not end. They need housing, jobs, language support, and a community that understands their journey. That's where local organizations like the ECDC African Community Center step in. They've been helping refugees and immigrants resettle in Denver since 2001. To understand their impact, I went to the center to speak with Managing Director Ron Buzzard. Ron, how many immigrants are you able to help and serve here at the center?
Yes, well, we serve have served thousands of people over the years, and on an annual basis, we're serving around 3,000 to 4,000 individuals with different levels of service. But we primarily assist newly arrived refugees with very intensive services for the first 90 days that they're here, and then walk with them in their journey to integration and self-sufficiency for the next 5 years.
Yeah. Even though I know through the years your mission hasn't changed, I know it can be tough navigating changing policy. Yeah. Can you talk about some of just the policy changes you're trying to navigate right now while trying to help refugees?
Absolutely. So first of all, the policies can impact how many refugees are allowed to come in a certain year. Currently, we're working under the lowest ceiling of arrivals of new refugees in the history of the refugee program. So that definitely has an impact on our services. It has an impact on the funding and where that funding is allocated. So just sheer numbers is something that we are dealing with on a daily basis.
Yeah. Can you give us an example of like the highest you've served at one time versus what that looks like now?
Sure. Before January, we were working under a ceiling of 125,000 refugees to be admitted into the U.S. for the year, which was completely doable, and I think really was in alignment with the humanitarian purpose of the refugee resettlement program. Currently, that number is 7,500 for the year.
For the entire U.S.?
For the entire U.S.
Wow. So I can imagine when we get Colorado specific, the number's pretty low.
Very low. We're talking hundreds. Yeah, I think 400 around there. But that's where that ceiling was set. It's very highly possible we won't even reach that number.
The immigrants you serve, talk to me about what they're fleeing, but also what they're running toward.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question because the immigrants we're serving are fleeing their homeland because of persecution. And that persecution can be based on a number of different things, whether it's religion or ethnicity. But there has to be that well-founded, documented persecution before they can achieve the status of refugee or asylee. And what they're coming for is safety, is hope, is for the opportunity to rebuild their lives in the U.S. And this is something that we see that we're moving away from in recent months. We're moving away from that humanitarian core of refugee resettlement. And we have to be really careful, I think, when we set immigration policy as a country, that we look at the different reasons that people are coming and our ability to be a part of that journey for them. I think that the U.S. has the capacity to be a leader in the world in resettling refugees, those people who are just seeking safety and a new life. And we have been that leader in recent years, and I feel like we're losing that position in the world.
I know a lot of the conversation has centered around Latin America, and many of the immigrants coming to our country from Latin American countries, and I completely understand why that is. Why, though, do you think there hasn't been as much chatter surrounding African refugees and our immigrants coming from African countries?
That's a great question. I think the African continent has been greatly neglected, even in the refugee resettlement program. I believe that there have been refugees who have left their homelands because of persecution, are now residing in neighboring countries, many of them in camps in very horrible conditions, who have been going through the process, following the steps, the legal steps to achieve refugee status and then be accepted as a refugee into the U.S. And many of them have been waiting for years, decades even. And now what we've seen is that not only is the number of refugees that are coming greatly reduced, we're seeing portions of the world that have been excluded, and Africa is one of them. Yeah, so much of Africa, Latin America. No, it's the current ceiling has excluded many of these groups who have been waiting for years.
Well, I want to thank you, Ron, for helping shine a light on this. This is what Real Talk is all about, is diving into issues that sometimes don't get the time needed in a traditional newscast. So thank you so much for being here and for joining us for this Real Talk.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. Thank you, Micah.
Such important work. I do want to add something, a conversation me and Ron had after the camera stopped rolling. He did mention that there are South Africans who have received an expedited process to come to the U.S. Through my own reporting, though, I have noticed that even that process has become politicized. Now, coming up, the path to citizenship. I'm sitting down with one of Denver 7's very own who recently became a U.S. citizen to learn about the challenges he overcame to get here. This is Real Talk with Micah Smith. Welcome back to Real Talk with Micah Smith. Throughout this episode, we've looked at immigration through the lens of the law and through the work of people helping newcomers build stability. But the heart of this issue are individual stories of sacrifice, perseverance, and hope. So today I want to end with one of those stories. One of our very own photojournalists here at Denver 7, Cesar Sabagol, recently became a U.S. citizen after years of dedication and determination, 6 years to be exact. His journey was far from easy, but I want to share it in hopes of shining a light on the challenges many people just like Cesar face. I sat down with him to learn more about what it took to get here and what it means for his family to finally be an American citizen. So you had a pretty full career in Colombia. What made you want to leave Colombia and come to the United States?
That was like a mutual decision when my ex-wife, who is an American woman, she was born in California, she was teaching in Colombia when we met. She's a teacher and she was working in a bilingual school in Colombia. And she was out of the country for a while. So when our kids were born, and she started thinking like, hey, I want to move, I want to go somewhere. And we thought about, hey, what about the United States? And she said like, okay, let's get back and let's go to, she thought that maybe Denver was the best option for us because she has relatives here and I have, and it's cheaper than California, of course. Well, I don't know how cheap it's now, but yeah.
So when you made that decision, did you have any idea how hard the process would be to actually become a citizen?
No idea. Actually, when we met, I don't even had a visa for anything. So when we decided to get married, she thought like maybe I would like to do it in the States. So I applied for my visa, tourism visa, and years later, I mean, the gap between the marriage and when we moved was years, like about 8 years.
So from the start of the process to the finish, how many years was that for you?
About 1 year. I mean,
From the start of the process of becoming a citizen to the approval?
6 years.
As you're going through all of this,
Yeah,
you're covering protests.
yeah.
You're covering stories about immigrants who are facing deportation.
Yeah.
You're seeing immigrants being locked up and put in the GEO facility.
Mm-hmm.
As you're covering these stories, what's going through your mind? Are you kind of putting aside your own personal experience, or are you absorbing, I guess, what you're covering?
Oh, it's hard, because I know that let's say that I'm a privileged guy, that I did it like how they expect you to do it. But I feel the other people too, this is, I don't know, I mean, this is not only all the paperwork, not only all the requirements, it's the money too. This is not cheap. And when I see the people, like, when I see people who are here doing it the right way, even if they didn't came to the country the right way, I feel like they probably deserve a better treatment. I agree with the criminals get kicked out. I agree with that. I mean, nobody wants criminals in their countries, But I mean, it's sad to see to be present in those moments where the people is getting, captured or whatever, and you can do anything. I feel like, it's not easy. It's not easy for me.
I've worked with you for a long time now, and I didn't really know until like the end of this process that you were going through it, that
Yeah.
you were working to become a citizen. Is this something that you kind of held close to you and didn't necessarily share with all of your colleagues? Or do you feel you're pretty open about it?
I was open, but maybe with my closest friends and partners, and because, as I said, I didn't know I was to be approved.
Right.
So,
Do you feel like, were you afraid of any like stigma at any point at work or out in your personal life?
yeah, like, what if I don't get approved? Like, what the people is gonna think about me? It's, you're a bad guy. You don't deserve this, or, and I had to come back to my country, as the people say, go back to the country. Yeah, man, it's not easy. I made a life here. It's not easy to get back and new start and no kids and
Okay, so you had your ceremony, which was beautiful. After your ceremony, you come to work eventually, and we like have a little party. How did you feel hearing from all of your colleagues who were congratulating you?
Oh, that was a nice moment. Kind. Even before, I was feeling all the support, from the people, my colleagues and my friends. But it was a surprise because for me, because I'm being in the process. So for me, this was like one more step, and I felt like, seems like my friends and my colleagues are happier than me. I love this country, even in this moment of
Turmoil.
turmoil. I'm happy and I love to be here and to be part of this community. Let's say that I'm living the American dream.
Cesar, I'm so proud of you and so happy to call you a friend. And that is this week's episode of Real Talk with Micah Smith. We are so thankful that every week you choose to tune in for this real talk on issues that impact Coloradans who are often overlooked. If there's a real talk you would like to have, please let me know. You can send me an email at micah.smith@denver7.com. In the meantime, you can find all of our shows on denver7.com/realtalk. Have a great day.